Hey everyone, welcome to the live stream. I've invited our guest speakers in here and we'll be getting them on in just a moment and getting started. Hey Richard, you.
Hey Mike, how are you?
Good. Good. So Kris and Evans have also been invited.
Okay.
So we'll
Yeah,
get all
Evans
in here. We'll get going. There's Kris. And I invited, there was, for some reason, there were multiple Evanses in here. I just both of them. We'll see which one it is.
I just got off the phone with him. He should be hopping on here shortly.
Yeah, he's logged in. He may be logged in on multiple devices. So whichever one he wants to use, he can join us. Let's try this again. We'll get Evans in here. So I sent him another invitation. He apparently dropped off and popped back on. So
he says he can see and hear us.
So Richard, did you guys get a lot of snow?
For South Carolina, absolutely.
Evans
probably
is having
maybe,
some technical
maybe
difficulties.
about an inch and a half. Not anything. Yeah, I used to live in Virginia for 15 years, so no, we didn't get any snow. We got a dusting.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I re-invited Evans again. And he just disappeared again.
I know that he did have some issues with out where he lives with his internet connection here the past week. So that could be something leading up to it. I'm not sure.
Well, let's try it one more time. He just rejoined. Chris Simons and Larry Tribble, thanks for hanging in there with us as we figure all this out. Evan says he can see and hear us from one of his earlier visits. Kris, will you kind of try and pay attention to the chat window? Here he comes.
There he is.
There he is. Hey, Evans.
What's going on? Yeah, I kept hitting join. I don't know what's going on. My computer seemed to have a fit.
Well, we're glad you could make it.
Yeah.
And so Kris and Evans and Richard, you guys have kind of been organizing this. I'm just like the guy I'm running the bar. That's what I said before. I want to run the bar where all the busy Christians hang out. So why don't you guys kick off telling us what's going on today and what we can expect? Evans or Kris, one or the other. Kris, you're muted, I think.
I think Kris, yeah.
We're not hearing you, Kris.
Uh-oh.
Obviously, we have to practice more.
Hear me now?
There you go. We hear you.
All right. It had picked up. Anyway. So hi, everybody. This year, what we're trying to do is create a space so that we can all grow together on different topics about integrating faith in the marketplace. And so we created monthly themes and then like sub-weekly themes. And so this month's theme was about embracing the Great Commission in the marketplace. And the weekly themes have been understanding your uniqueness in your marketplace role, ideas to be more intentional with your faith in 2025, using your job as a blessing to those around you, and showcasing discipleship with your coworkers and peers. And so we are just going to have a conversation around that. And so I would love to hear how Evans and Richard, and on my side, there's a big blank screen where Evans was. Are you seeing that too?
I think his camera disconnected.
Yeah, it's been disconnecting today. We're good. I can hear you.
All of you guys forgive us. This is like brand new live stream technology. So, give us grace because Jesus gave us grace. So we expect the same. So, Richard, since I can see you, and Evans, why don't you guys share a little bit about how you embrace the Great Commission in the marketplace?
Yeah, and introduce yourselves first.
Yes, and please do that for people that don't know you.
Go ahead, Richard.
Richard,
Okay.
why don't you go first?
Yeah, my name's Richard Creswell. I'm with the Duren Companies, which is under the leadership of Evans that's with us here, even though you can't see him. We are working towards both the nonprofit sector and the for-profit sector, the corporate world, of building impact beyond the transaction or beyond the sale, whatever that works within your organization or your company, of really making Christ the focus of everything that you do, and living it out. And living it out is typically more than Sunday. Monday through Saturday is the time that we take Sunday and we apply it to the week. So it's our Monday through Saturday. And working with CBMC in the past and really kind of learning a lot about the workplace and how it can be a mission field, how it can be an avenue to share Christ, not just through speaking, which of course, we're commanded to speak. The Great Commission wants us to do that, but we also have to lead by example, by walking it. And so doing so, Evans and I both have a heart for that, whether it be the corporate world, whether it be the nonprofit world, of turning that marketplace exactly what you guys are looking at here with Follower of One, of being a mission field that we are in every day, Monday through Saturday, Monday through Friday, whatever it may be, and then getting fed on Sunday and then carrying it through the next Monday through Friday. And so that's what we kind of feel like we're supposed to be doing. I think that's what the Great Commission wants us to do, is to go and make disciples. It didn't tell us to save anyone. It told us to go make disciples. So I love that aspect of it, of making disciples, living out what we're told to do, living as best as we can like Christ, and building others up through that avenue of doing it.
Evan, you want to tag on to that?
Love to, and I apologize. This is the second video call I've been on today, and I've had to disable and re-enable the camera there. No, so I'll tell you, my story starts back. I wanted to be a pastor, and God said no. And my story starts at thinking that was the only way I could be on mission and have any kind of ministry. I went into a Fortune 15 company doing sales. Was in tech startups before starting the Duren Companies. And I tell people, I said it this morning, I said, sales did not sound like Jesus. And so I struggled with that tension for a long time until I really, I wrote a book, released it in 2023. It's called Send Me, after Isaiah 6:8. But part of that was, if you look at 6:8 from Isaiah, then Matthew 28, really understanding what that means to walk it out, live it out, and how God calls us all to our own mission field. So I love our pastors and missionaries, and I want to support them. But I also think if there's 3.4 billion people on the planet with little to no access to the gospel, I don't think they're expected to shoulder that alone to go out and tell everyone about Jesus. So I love that we have marketplace ministry. I found what that means for us, and excited to be here to talk more about the Great Commission.
Yeah, one of the things that I did last year when I graduated seminary was create a course that integrates your faith and work, and it was all about basing marketplace ministry from the aspect of the early church, and how their job was basically to be Jesus in everything that they did Monday through Friday, so to speak, modern day terms. And then their Sabbath day, which was for them, it was Saturday because it was Jewish. They got fed and equipped to go back out and be Jesus the rest of the week. So you're absolutely right. So, Mike, you want to share anything?
No, I want you guys to keep going. I'm anxious to hear more about embracing the Great Commission in the marketplace. I'm being the admin.
All righty.
Love it.
So, Evans and Richard, what have you guys been doing in terms of teaching and helping the companies that you connect with to be more effective marketplace ministers? Like, what are some of the tools? What are some of the resources that you suggest to them so that our community might be able to look into them?
Yeah, great question. And I think the first thing that we found really is, I got to tell you, there's a lot of people we talk with, and when we share certain things about, hey, well, what do you believe about faith and work, right? Having that conversation. Do you believe that your work matters? I think there is really this barrier that has to come down, this wall that says, hey, Maybe my work is not important. Maybe it is just a 4-letter word and a paycheck, right? There's a lot of people that struggle to see the genuine importance of what they do and the significance. And coming from a sales background and a corporate side, you know, every 90 days there's a new quota. Every 90 days you're back to zero, and then at the year. And so there's all these things that happen, and those things aren't inherently bad. I mean, having quotas and carrying numbers, they're not bad things. But when they become the goal and the only thing you're striving for, that's when it takes everything else and pushes it aside. So I think the first thing we've done with people is trying to bring awareness about the actual state of the world when it comes to the gospel, where it is and where it's not, to help people understand, you know, 3.4 billion people, like I talked about, and they're not just all in other countries around the world. I mean, we have pockets of people in our country here in the U.S. that don't have access to the gospel, which seems absolutely insane in 2025, right? So I think one is awareness, kind of a state of the union of where the gospel is and is not. And then 3, it's starting to help them see scripture and understand that the significance of their work and the purpose of their work given through their gifts, skills, and talents, that unique thumbprint, right? How do they see themselves when they think about how God sees them and created them? And so it's definitely a foundational piece. Before we send them out anywhere else, we spend a lot of time trying to help people understand that. And we do some other work. We have some frameworks we developed. There's one that I love to lead people through, and it's all about, there's the piece of what a transaction is, especially if you're a business owner or sales professional, or if you're a nonprofit looking for donor development and investors and partners. And that's a part of it, right? So Richard hit the nail on the head earlier. He talked about impact beyond the transaction. Transactions happen all around us, but how do we recognize what can happen beyond that if we just want to lean in and take the effort? And then also if we're aware and believe that there's importance and significance beyond the dollar for us, for our client, for our donors, whoever it may be, and what can change, right? So quick story, and I know I'm turning to Richard on that too, but I remember of some friends of ours years and years ago, we were talking about tithing, and they went to visit church with us, and the husband put some cash in the check, and later on I had the wife was saying, hey, why did you put so much in there? And he's like, well, it seemed like the right thing to do. And so like we started talking, and I said, well, do y'all understand where the money goes? And so they never sat down and taught anybody about missions, right? And what that is and what it looks like to help fund the Great Commission and things of that nature. So I think we got to remember that everybody's at a different walk on stage in their walk, and where they are in their faith, and every part and piece of it. I'm not better or anything like that than anybody else. And it's like, hey, here's the things I've learned, and I'm going to learn from you, and iron sharpens iron, and let's go.
Yep.
Richard, that was
Richard.
Yeah, I'm not sure how I'm supposed to follow up with that, but yeah, that, you know, one of the best things that I think we all can relate to was the quote by Billy Graham, when he said, you know, he believes the next big evangelical movement is going to be in the marketplace or in the workplace. And yeah, I really think it just relates back to what I said earlier of the intentional relationship, which is what Evans and I focus a lot on. He's actually one of those sales guys that actually wants to have a relationship with his clients, not just a transaction. So, you know, and that's what I've really built a lot of my career on in the nonprofit realm, was a relationship with the donors, really building out what their intent is and being intentional about what their intent is, not what my goal was. So, you know, with that saying by Billy Graham, it really reflects back to the main focus of what we do at work is not just work all the time. It's kind of living out that Monday through Friday of what we picked up and soaked up on Sunday, and what we're doing daily, what we should be doing daily, and our devotional thoughts and our prayers, and really applying that to a living example, because that's how Christ lived out. You know, Christ didn't have to walk in and announce himself in a room. You know, just like if a lion walks into a room, he doesn't have to tell you he's a lion. So it just really, it's that, you know, when you walk in, it's that old cliche. I don't want to sound cliche here, but the adage of walk into a room and talk about Jesus and speak if you have to. It's that whole kind of mindset of that, which is absolutely true, but we have to speak at some point. We have to be able to relate. We have to be able to share the gospel if somebody asks us, hey, I see something different in what you're doing. What do you have that I don't have? That kind of thing. So, That's really the relational aspect that I think you really have to have with not just your coworkers, but everywhere you go, whether it's a client, whether it's a nonprofit executive or an executive owner of a business, whatever it may be. You got to be able to walk in the door and show Christ, and then speak when you need to.
And I think what you said really applies to stewardship, because when Jesus put us on this earth, as we grew up and we ended up wherever we ended up in our lives, he's been really training us to steward our time, our talents, our treasures. And that includes during our workday. And that includes how we spend our time, and are we listening to what he's saying, so that when we're walking around super busy trying to get 100 things done, that he can interrupt us to go, hey, my child over there in your co-cube, if you work in a office environment, or that barista that you're getting coffee from as you're heading to your next movie needs something from me, and you're going to be the one to give it to them.
Yep, that's it.
So, exactly.
Absolutely.
Well, I think you raised another point there too. I mean, I wrote this down just so I wouldn't forget it. I think as we look at it, do we see work as a form of worship? That's another thing we talk to people about too, right? Is understanding that work is worshipful. If we go back to the garden, my grandfather's a farmer, and he will love to tell you that farming is the oldest type of employment in the world. And, and we have that conversation all the time. And he's a hoot. He's a farmer in South Georgia. He's in his 80s and still works on that farm 5 days a week. I mean, he is just a tough man. Love him. But I think, do we see our work as worship? And then to remember too, when we look at the Great Commission, it's, go therefore is that translate literally as you are going or while you're going. So if we believe that we are going, we believe we're being sent, and we believe that work is a form of worship, how do we naturally incorporate that? And Mike, you and I've talked about this, and Kris and Richard knows this. Maybe we hadn't talked about it yet, Kris, because we've only met a few times briefly, but I really do believe and stand by. I think there's a little bit of a divide in the Western culture about faith and work and where it sits. And, we're quick to say, hey, let's evangelize, but the discipleship piece and that real understanding, I think it's left behind. So to be able to help people see that is so vitally important, and like you said, whether it's the barista or somebody at the table that you meet, you never know where that opportunity is. But how do we become intentional about it and consider it?
And the early church didn't have an evangelism strategy, to your point. They were never required to evangelize. It occurred organically because of the relationships they built. Because at that time, people saw that they were different. In ancient times, people, if they didn't have a boy child, sometimes they would leave their children in the desert, to die naturally. And the Christians would go pick them up because they valued life. And the pagan culture saw that and were like, why are you picking these kids up? It's more food for them. Like, it's going to be a drain on your resources. And they were like, because that's what God wants us to do. And if their neighbors didn't have a fire and didn't have something, they would give out of their own limited resources to help and support them, which was something that people didn't do because they were about taking care of themselves. And those sparked conversations. Why are you doing that? As Mike would say, why are you doing that? And then they would be able to share about Jesus. So it was never a sales pitch. It was about what they saw happening.
Yeah.
So I just wrote down.
We have a.
That was fantastic. Yeah, go ahead, Mike. Sorry.
Yeah, we have a question from Larry Tribbles asking a question for some examples of what you guys are talking about. So do you have some specific examples, Evans or Richard?
Yeah, I'll tell you a couple. I mean, it's I've worked in Fortune 15s and startups, and it was rough at first trying to figure out how do you share the gospel, and I've not done it perfectly by any stretch. I made plenty of mistakes and said plenty of stupid things. And there's days where I've told Richard, I said, man, if you'd seen days in my career, you'd been like, there's no way this guy loves Jesus. He totally screwed this day up completely. And so learning to have grace too. But I think, there's one specific example that I'll give. When I took 3 or 4 classes in the seminary here at Columbia International University in South Carolina, trying to figure out, thought God was calling me there. That's not what he was calling me to do. Funny enough, they are a client of ours now, but in a different capacity. But I remember going to class, and we had an Old Testament professor said, hey, one of the assignments is we want you to go talk with someone about Jesus, but we also want you to give them an opportunity, someone of a different culture and background, to have them share what they believe about whatever it is or whoever it is. And I had a guy at work, and I called him and I said, hey man, I have this assignment. You're not a project. I need some help. And I explained to him what the assignment was. And he said, are you interested in becoming Buddhist, Hindu, or Muslim? I said, absolutely not. He said, are you trying to convert me? I said, no, sir. I'm just trying to share the gospel and just share my faith and have an honest conversation. He goes, great, let's talk. And that was probably 16 hours of conversation over the next several weeks. That was some of the best discussion I've ever had with someone in a business setting to talk about the gospel. It was very uncomfortable at first because this person and I did work together in our client base. But it was really kind of freeing to be able to have a conversation and believe that, hey, we can disagree, but can we just have in discussion, a dialogue, and learn from one another. So that's just one example. There's others praying with people that have said, hey man, I'd love for you to pray with me, or I'd be able to ask somebody to pray. And even others where we've been able to talk to them about Jesus only because we've been working with them. That's the only way we knew him, was because of the marketplace. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah.
Larry's asking how it translates to current clients.
So for instance, right now, Larry, one of the clients we're working with, we're doing a lot to help them build up a brand new incubator. And it's all about marketplace ministry. It's knowing that not everybody who goes into school is going to be a pastor missionary, but these young people who want to be in the mission field in terms of their business. And so one thing we've done right now is with this current client, we're out helping to build awareness and branding for them. We're sharing that message. That first one I said, that 3.4 billion people. So we're walking into companies where they're small business owners. We're walking into companies that are, this one gentleman has 30-something companies. They do a couple $100 million a year. We're having conversations with these people saying, hey, let us explain to you what's happening in the marketplace and what's happening outside of the marketplace too. Like what's happening in the Christian space. I think Christian space, right? What we would say is faith-based, and pulling those together. I don't know if that's kind of more what you're asking, Larry. I hope that helps. It's really just having those conversations with people. We honestly lead primarily with a little less of let me come to you and tell you about the gospel. We're a Christian faith-based business. We come in trying to say, hey, look, we want to lead with excellence. We want to look like every business out there in terms of an expectation of being a great business. But behind that, the driver for that is our faith. That's really how we take it to market.
Yeah.
And Stacy, no, ma'am, he did not convert.
Richard, do you want to add on to
At least
that?
not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Richard, do you want to add on to that?
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of examples that I've got that are really interesting. And working for the Salvation Army for over 20 years in development with donors and prospects in that realm, my goodness, it was all over the place. And you think Salvation Army, you think Christian organization, so you think all donors, of course, are believers and all this kind of stuff. Well, this guy was a doctor, and he was an agnostic, and gave significant amounts of money, of course, for tax advantages because he was a doctor and he needed to. But some of the best conversations I've ever had was with that guy on his back porch because he would tell me that every time a certain faith would come to his door with their little badges and their things on to share with him, he'd invite them in to sit on the back porch and talk with them. And they didn't know what they were getting into. But they, because typically they're younger. He was an older gentleman. He was very, very wise about even scripture of what he knew. And it was very good conversation. So he enjoyed that conversation. So I had a lot of interesting conversations with this gentleman. He eventually did become a very large donor to the Salvation Army in Roanoke, Virginia. And he developed, he was gone for a while. I hadn't heard from him, and I noticed that he was not around. I'd stopped by his house, never got an answer. He was always welcoming. And he had developed some type of blood disease as a doctor. He knew this stuff and went in to get, different kinds of treatments and stuff. He was in Florida doing so. And so I just let him know that I was keeping him in my thoughts and prayers. And I never changed. I never changed course, so to speak. So it was always consistent across the board. I never pushed him. I never, but I did question him. And if he would say something that was out of context to God's word, I'd correct him, and he appreciated that. That's the really neat thing about it. Didn't turn into a debate back and forth. It was always conversation. So I believe that he has since passed. He passed at some point, I believe, within the transition of me coming down to the Carolinas and taking a new position here. And I'm not sure if, that's one of those instances where you pour a lot of time into somebody, just becoming genuine friends with him. He actually would text me here and there, just to kind of keep in contact. But it's one of those that I don't have an answer. I don't know if he ever converted. But I hope that my conversations were somewhere leading him to the correct answers that he was, ultimately searching for. So I wanted to bring that one up because even in the workplace, even in the, the realm that we're in every day, we look for that result, so to speak. But sometimes we don't see it. So we don't know, I compare it to the thief on the cross. We don't know what God's going to allow and what he's not going to allow. We just know we need to be obedient.
And the truth is it's not our job to save people.
Absolutely.
I mean,
we don't have power.
The Bible literally says only Jesus can draw them in. Only God the Father can draw them in. That's what Jesus said. Only God the Father can draw them in. And so our job is to build the relationship and have the conversations and open the door for relationship. It's not our job to save people.
Just like Evan's grandfathers, we're farmers professionally.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's why the parable of the seeds is so important, because it showcases the way different people receive how we interact with them. Some people grab it right away, but then they lose faith when there's a challenge. Other people grab it and hold on to it, and it doesn't matter about the challenge. They've really embodied and adopted the whole understanding of Jesus.
There's a statement from my pastor about 3 weeks. We have a brand new pastor at church. We had the same pastor for 23 years, baptized me and my sons. Phenomenal guy. Phenomenal man of God, and he retired, and so we brought a new pastor in, and he said something recently. He said the only thing you get to take with you are the souls you introduced to Jesus, and I thought that was so fitting. I'm going back through the chat. Larry, I apologize. I did not see your question earlier up. I think this make more sense now here. I see the marketplace clients. Who are they? The typical client. I think in tandem with that, what's interesting is I can tell you, in my career, thousands of transactions, hundreds of clients, $100 million, work with some great people. If you said, how many times did your leadership team tell you, hey, it's okay if we don't get the deal, just tell them about Jesus? That many times, right? It never happened. Not that it should have, but that's just the reality of it. So there was not this reinforcement of why it was important. And so I think, back to, to the question there, Larry, about kind of the curious about the market and the clients. We do a lot with nonprofits and donor development with the background that Richard has. And what's really cool there is Richard is relational. He will not just take a dollar bill from someone who wants to give. He is the kind of person who says, hey, let's think about how this helps you and impacts you and your family, your livelihood. What are you giving to? It's beautiful. From a for-profit customers, we have a handful. They range, but we've also launched a brand new sales coaching platform that I'm very excited about, because that's been my passion for 20 years, the sales piece. So there's a lot of nonprofits right now with a slight mix of for-profit, but we're hoping to grow that too. I just want to make sure I answered your question there, Larry. I apologize, brother. So.
And what's really interesting.
If we had a better technician running the chat, it probably would have been easier.
I've never seen the chat. I'm looking back and forth now. I'm going, all right, I got this now. I'm good.
And what's really interesting about the conversation is you're talking about donorship, right? And people automatically think that's about giving to a nonprofit.
Right.
But the truth is, our money is not our own. We give to whoever Jesus says. That means it could be, a family member. It could be follower of one. It could be the homeless person across the road that you walk by every day. It could be anybody, but you have to be completely willing to give up your checkbook to Jesus so that you can hear, is this my season to be a donor partner for so-and-so? Is this today the time to write out a check for whatever this need is, etc.?
What do you think about, it's like the rich young ruler. I mean, Jesus didn't tell him to take his money, throw it off a cliff. He said, give it to the poor, right? And so it's this, we run into people like that. I've been that guy before. I grew up without a whole lot of money, and man, money became an idol. My early 20s up towards 30, I didn't know how money belonged to God, because as far as I was concerned, I was the one working for it. And so I didn't quite make the connection, right? And so I think too, understanding that if it's all God's at the end of the day and we can't take it with us, we hear that, but what does it actually mean? And how do we become better stewards? How do we make sure that we are funding the Great Commission? There's some people here in town that we know in a foundation, and that's what they do. And this guy's line is, hey, tithing's the floor, not the ceiling. And I love that. And it was a great reminder to me that, hey, don't just hit the checkbox, but think about, like you just said, Kris, how can we bless others? And we don't live in a society that wants, I mean, again, like, take care of yourselves. Yeah, that's what I wrote. Like, wait a minute, that's more philosophy. That's more to do. Well, there's a reason for it, right? And trusting in the provision. For any business owners and entrepreneurs on here, I will tell you, if you've been through it, you know what it's like to go into something and you don't have any guarantees, right? The only guarantee is that you got to work hard to make it happen. And you got to trust the process, and you better be walking the steps God gave you to walk, or, you're going to pivot. And so I think it's very similar with our finances.
Yeah.
Well,
Richard, you want to add
gave
up?
me an idea for a question, Evans. If you don't mind, Kris, I have a question I'd love to
Yeah,
ask all
go ahead.
three of you. So, speaking with a friend this morning who just recently lost his position after a number of years with the company. And so we talk about a lot of these ideas, embracing the Great Commission in the marketplace in a sales or entrepreneurial setting. But what do we do when we basically have our kind of economic model rearranged for us by, say, job transition or health issue? And how does that feed into this whole idea of embracing the Great Commission?
How's that work, Evans?
I'll wait. I've been speaking a lot. I'm going to go last.
I know Evans's story for the past year, so I know it's a really good one to share. So it's interesting. I've never been in this realm, and I tell Evans this all the time because he's coaching me along the way, as well as me kind of using my experience and what God's given me as an experience to kind of build up to this level. So I'm going to be short because Evans can relate with this one really, really well, because he had a very lucrative sales career. I've had a very lucrative nonprofit career. However, there's a whole different economic dynamic there. Nonprofit is not the same as a lucrative sales career with a large corporation like Evans was in. So, it was fun, it was nice, and it was comfortable. And that's a deadly place to be, is comfortable. So I can relate with that that shift, because if it were up to me, I'd still be with the Salvation Army, working my way up to the leader of the team, so to speak, for the states of North and South Carolina, not just a regional rep. That's what I came in and worked on. So if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. Because I was so comfortable. I grew up in the Salvation Army. My grandfather was an officer for over 40 years. I knew it back and forth. So it was easy for me to raise money, share the story, and relate to people and what they wanted to help with, because I could tell you anything about it. So it was very comfortable. But when I came back to the Carolinas, God quickly took me away from the Salvation Army into an organization called CBMC, Christian Business Men's Connection, where I learned about the workplace and discipleship and evangelism in the workplace. And so I kind of look at that as a stepping stone I wasn't with CBMC for probably more than 18 months, and we parted ways. But it's so funny because I met with Evans Monday, and I still had a job with CBMC. That was July 8th. By July 10th, I was gone from CBMC. Thursday, I was at another meeting with Evans, and I was like, "Hey, let's take a look at this consulting thing you were talking about." We were in a coffee shop for 4 or 5 hours downtown Columbia, just kind of bouncing off each other. And so that's kind of how we worked on this, and I came and joined forces with Evans, and I've never experienced such freedom of stepping out into a less comfortable economic situation, because now I've got to go get prospects. I've got to go, Salvation Army. I was telling Evans and one of our people we work with yesterday, the donors and prospects always came to me. We had direct mail, so we would just pick them up from direct mail and start cultivating the relationship. I was like, now I've got to go find them. I've got to go find clients that we can consult on the nonprofit level and work with donors that, are prospects for the certain areas that we're looking at helping with. So I'm in a totally different area of it now, but I look back and I see the economic situation was fun, but developing the experience to where I am now, to where I can help more people become fishers of men instead of me being the fisher. So it's really a neat experience, and it takes a lot of uncomfortable steps outside of your comfort zone, and being in that. It's nice to be comfortable, but it's also a dangerous spot to be. So so that's if I can help with that at all, hold on to your faith.
Yeah, and for me, my kind of journey through financial freedom is I've always had a deep faith in Jesus, always. So it was never about doubting Jesus. It was more about the stress that I carried when the bills were due.
Yeah.
And there was a long period of my life where every time there was a bill due and I didn't see how it was going to get paid, I was super stressed. And I was like, Jesus, like, where's the money?
Yep.
And then right during COVID and before COVID, the Lord started really dealing with me about that stress. And before that, I'd gone on this crazy adventure across the country where I was forced to live on Jesus because I never knew where I was going to eat, sleep, drink, whatever. I had no security for like 3 months when I traveled the country, and he fed me and housed me and all of that stuff. So then later, when I was back in a place that I was secure in terms of housing, my money was all over the place and I was stressing. And he was like, "Do you believe who I am?" And I'm like, "Of course I do. You took care of me when I was out traveling." And he says, "Why are you stressing about the bills?" And I was like, "Okay." And so he brought me through this whole place where he asked me to give and stop looking at my checkbook. And so he would ask me to give, and I gave an amount, and then he would pay all the bills. And then it happened again, and I was like, "All right, Jesus, I'm going to play a game with you." And I called the game, I Can't Outgive You, God. And so every month I would give ahead of what I knew what I was going to be paid at a rate he told me to give, and he paid the bills. And then I would give the next month $50 more. And so at the end of this game, I was giving a significant amount of money that I had never given before, and all the bills were paid. And then he finally said, "Okay, you're done. You've learned your lesson." And that set me up for financial freedom, because now, even though it's a little bit stressful to see the bills come in, I'm like, oh, okay, fine. Jesus is in charge. And it doesn't mean all the bills get paid all the time, because sometimes they don't. But there's a whole lot less stress in the process. And that is amazing, the peace that has replaced anxiety. And so I would encourage everybody who's really struggling with financial anxiety to take God up on his offer that he really is the Prince of Peace.
That's excellent.
Evans' turn.
First of all I had to do is I had to give Richard a copy of the book and this really nice shirt, and he was like, "I'd love to." Don't make it sound like it was that hard to hire Richard. It was great.
I'll do anything for a free shirt.
So, no, it's funny when I think about it, and I don't know if I ever verbalized it this way, but I think God had to help me break my love of money. There's a point in time where, again, we weren't poor growing up, but we didn't have extra, right? There's 4 sons. I'm the oldest of 4 boys, single income family. Got real tight. It got tough. Love my parents. They did the best they could. It was a phenomenal childhood, but I didn't want to be like that financially coming out of school. And so my thing was, how can I become, I literally sat down at 22 writing a book, Millionaire by 30. I was going to track a project to get to $1 million by 30 years old. And then I'd be in port and all this stuff. And that lasted about 2 weeks. And I was like, this is not what I need to do. But I think for me, it broke me when I was in those seminary classes. The reason I left is I changed companies, and I ended up in a lawsuit. They said, "Hey, you broke a non-solicit." I said, "I did not break it." They were a very large company. I was not. And so several of us ended up in a lawsuit. And I had to go battle that, and I could not afford to go to school and pay my attorney fees. And so in the process, several months in, my attorney says, "Hey, you didn't do anything wrong. So I'm going to give you half of your money back and credit half your hours." I'm going to credit half your hours, then I'm going to reduce your rate. And I've never heard of an attorney doing anything like that. And he said, "Man, you just keep doing what you're supposed to be doing." And so it took us a little over a year to go through the lawsuit. And on the other end of it, I remember looking at my wife and I said, "Hey, you know what's crazy? We never starved. We didn't eat steak every night, but we weren't eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches every night either. We have 2 sons. Like, we were able to put the shoes on their feet and clothe them." And it really started to break my relationship with money. And then I think the next 7, 8 years after that, we had moments where we had it, moments where we didn't have as much. But back to your point, Kris, we just trying to keep giving and believing that we were being blessed to bless others. And so even now, do I have moments where it's tight in my mind and I go, "Oh my gosh, absolutely." And I had to sit back and remember, all right, man, not steak, but not peanut butter and jelly. Like, you're somewhere in between. And I think that's the beauty of it is when you can give, I'm trying to find the right way to say this. When you can give knowing it's not yours and believe that God's going to take care of you. I called it kind of like the free fall. When I was leaving the business, I had somebody say, "Hey man," one of my clients, he said, "Evans, aren't you kind of at the top of your game?" And I was running a multi-million-dollar territory in a region. And I said, "Yeah." He says, "Well, why are you leaving?" I was like, "I can't stay. I can't explain it." And so I wasn't forced into a different economic situation, Mike, but I took one on willingly, and it looked crazy. I mean, it really did. It looked stupid, frankly. But man, like, God continues to show up. We are now, what is it, the 23rd? We're 1 year and 23 days into the new business. And I mean, God just shows up and keeps reminding me of why we're doing it.
Yeah. Very cool.
Nice.
Very cool. Well, I asked the chat folks too for another question. The next question I had that kind of comes to mind is, so what do we do today? Do we create a grand strategy, or do we focus more on activities we can do in the moment? What would God tell you to pass along to us?
I'll start it. How about that? And Kris,
Okay.
Kris, you start, Kris?
No, you, please. I'll go last. That's fine.
I think there comes a point to where we said it earlier. I think we step over people in this country, specifically in the Western church, where it's like, "Hey, do you believe? Great. Let's go to the next person." And it's all about trying to evangelize. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but we tend not to see it that way in the marketplace. So the question I continuously press against myself is, do I care enough about that person across the table to, no matter what they say about me, think about me, whether this deal goes through, whether they hate my services, whether they cuss me or bless me, do I care enough about this person to think about their soul and their eternity beyond how I feel or what it could do for me and my family financially or otherwise? And I think that's one of those things where just continuing to ask myself, how do I honor the other person? I mean, God made each and every one of us. How do I care about you more than I care about my wallet or my business, right? That's one, just a question I have to ask myself to stay centered on it. I hope that helps a little bit there.
Very cool.
Richard?
Yeah,
Chris?
I have to say ditto to that because from my side, I'm looking at nonprofits, and most of them in the Christian realm. Some are not, but the whole mindset of how do we keep your ministry up front and help it thrive and flourish, so that those that you're looking to impact are met as well. Your clients, whoever you're working with, whether it be through a musical arts program and scholarship program for people to do have these phenomenal opportunities with big artists and things like that, all the way down to students at a school creating opportunities for themselves to go out into the mission field and have a business mind and structure under them as a foundation to help them fund themselves through their business, instead of having to be a typical missionary that goes from church to church, asking for funding and for support. So I think from my side of seeing that, kind of relating it to what Evan says, how do I help you flourish through what you're allowing me this opportunity to be paid to help you build that structure? Because a lot of these, it's literally just an education process on structure and having that kind of skeleton that you can rely on as an organization to be strategic and to help you flourish in whatever you feel God's called you to do, whatever your ministry is.
And for me in my marketplace missionary role, I've got, lots of different clients, follower of one, which is one. I'm the community manager, and it's really interesting with the relationships that I've built here. It's about stewarding the environment so that people can grow. With my own personal clients in my own business, it's about helping them figure out what Jesus wants for them so that they can create an adventure mindset to move into that with less anxiety, more joy and peace, right? And with family and friends and just my everyday life, it's about listening. Like, am I paying attention to what God wants? Sometimes I'm super busy and I know He wants me to talk to somebody and I don't, and I regret it later. And other times I take the time and stop and do what He tells me to do, and I get to be a blessing. And so it's really managing the spiritual promptings that are happening all around me all day, and whether or not I set aside my own will and desire to follow Jesus, what Jesus wants in any given moment.
Very cool. Yeah, Christopher Simons asked the question again. It's kind of restating some of what we talked about earlier, I think, but it's one of those things to revisit. Are we willing to focus so much on the kingdom that it costs us money? I think I'm restating his question that way, well, accurately enough. Where we're willing to take the risk where it costs us money. I think there are times I catch myself. There are times when I will do that, but it's just because of personal preference more than I think than me talking to Jesus. That's one of those things I got to get better at, is asking Him before I just jump to my own conclusion. But what do any of you say? You have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think there's a framework that we built, if we look back over the last 20 years of just business. And we think about there are going to be transactions. So back to the idea that there's impact beyond the transaction. What I've found is the marketplace has become a platform, right? Like my sales role has become the platform that enables us to do things. And so when we think about it as money as a tool, and we talk about drivers, challenges, and outcomes of people. So I talk with clients and prospects and say, hey, let me explain to you how we think about the sales equation. And that's great. That's the transactional piece. But then there's that human element, that impact beyond it. And that's where we get into our drivers, our challenges, our desired outcomes, and how we take that message and think about it from that perspective. And now the idea there is I don't ever want people to think or feel like, hey, let's go lead with the dollar. I think when we get paid to do our jobs, I've always told people in sales, you do your job and do it well, you'll get paid. And that's kind of how sales works, right? Specifically just my background. So I think there's this idea of, if our driver is not to be kingdom minded, then we've already started in the wrong place.
Yeah.
When money comes, it allows us and enables us to do things to spread the gospel, right? I mean, I was telling somebody the other day, I said, it's not free to get on a plane for some of these folks we work with that go around the world to Kenya and other countries. It takes money. So what we're seeing is you've got ministries and nonprofits who have a heart for this thing, and you have other business professionals. And what we found is they need each other. There's this handshake between the two of them. So I think if we understand that the kingdom impact that we're trying to drive is about spreading the gospel and sharing the message, but we also want to be good stewards and honor those dollars, because there's an economy for the kingdom.
And the truth is, if you're connected to ministries that really do work that you believe in, it may not be about you pulling out your checkbook, although that would be great. It might be about you making relationship connections for them. That could be the stewardship. It might be, the small business owner who's doing really great kingdom work. You're referring them business. That way they can make money and feed their families. I mean, there's 1,000 ways to do it. You just need to ask Jesus, how can I serve? How can I help?
Yeah.
There's Larry's question right now. How can we help? So how can we help, everybody?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to ask. I mean, Larry, you asking how you can, how can we help the Duren Companies? How can we help follow? What's the question there? Because I've got a lot of ideas going through my.
When you say that to me, I can name several of the ways that you can.
Oh man.
Well, why don't the both of you, while Larry's typing, why don't the both of you tell us what your needs are to see if somebody here can fill them or help you in some way? Because we have a whole community of people who love kingdom.
That's great. And Larry, thank you for asking that, Larry. That means more than you know, buddy. Especially we've never met, and I can, you can see my face and I can't see yours right now. So thank you. I think for us, we took a chance on part of what our messaging is, right? We believe that we can help people increase revenues, development, donors, all that. But our real audience and target audience is really not just to increase the numbers. But we know that we can help do that. And that may be the lead in to share the gospel. So we're not looking to only work with companies and individuals that are explicitly Christian, right? Mm-hmm. We want this to be a mission in itself and a ministry in itself. So I would say if you know of anyone who is looking to increase impact beyond the transaction, what I mean by that is, hey, the deals are going to happen. We're going to grow our business. We have to do that. We all know it takes money to live. We've talked about paying bills and all that kind of stuff. But the people that are looking for more to be generated behind it, whether that's on a spiritual level, a humanistic level, community level, whatever it is, we'd love to connect with those people, right? And then we want to know how we can help serve others. I'm a huge fan of networking and connecting with people. I got 2 messages today on LinkedIn from guys who are looking for jobs. I mean, there's always something out there. And so I'm a big believer of the church is not just a building you walk into. It's all of us everywhere we go. I would just ask it to be, it's hard to say what we want for help because we want to help other people too. But that's kind of where we sit.
I think a great thing, we just went live with our website. Evans has been, I would say, pulling out his hair, but me and Evans
had some last week.
We had hair last week. Mike knows better than that. So if you can check out the website, it will lay out literally everything. You can be a part of our Send Me Collective newsletter, which gives you information on what's going on with what we're doing, different updates and things that might be within the industry that could help you. So that might be another avenue as well, Larry, if you want to check that out. It's thedurencompanies.com.
Yeah, and I'll tell you this, we will always take prayer, whether you're doing it with us on the spot or behind the scenes. I will tell you right now, somebody asked me the other day, what that word for 2025, and I'm saying discernment. We want to make sure that we're walking into opportunities and looking for opportunities to share the gospel. We want to stand out in a very crowded marketplace and do it differently. And we want that to be the driver. and nothing else, frankly. We get calls from people. We've had to kind of turn a few things away that just didn't quite fit. And we've got some other opportunities on the table trying to decide, is that aligned with the mission? So to be wise in our discernment and to continue to find those folks that we can actually reach and help that God's putting in our path.
Mike, do you want to
Very
wrap us
cool.
up?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I appreciate you guys doing that. We'll put a link to the website in the notes and down below this when we post it. We'll also, I want you to connect both, I think, Evans and Richard. Well, I know Richard's on this current mission trip, but they're both in the online community. You can connect with them in here. I think you guys have your LinkedIn profiles available and stuff like that so that people can connect with you. And the website has all that on here too. It looks good, by the way. I just pulled up the new version, so I hadn't seen it in a while.
Well, it was worth losing all my hair over, Mike.
And for
Yeah,
those of you that
I
are,
didn't get as much as the website for losing mine, so way to go.
and for those of you who are watching the recording, we're going to be doing these roundtables pretty regularly on the different topics. So if you're interested in being a roundtable guest, feel free to let me know. We're looking to interview some of the newer members of our community. So if you're interested, get a hold of me. I'll put you on the Meet Follower of One calendar. So we've got a lot of cool things going on.
Yeah, that's neat.
Yeah. So thanks to all of you, and thanks to everyone who was on this chat today. We had a bunch of guests, and we have a bunch more on here now. So Hale and Solomon and Paresh have all joined, and Stacy and Larry are still here. So thank you all for being a part of this, and Christopher as well. Thank you all for being a part of the live stream, and Evans and Richard. Thank you guys for doing this. Chris, thanks for making this happen.
Yeah. Thank you all for allowing us to be part of this. This is fantastic. Thank you, everyone, for attending and joining.
Yep.
See ya. And
take care.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Have a
Bye,
great day.
everybody.